The next phase of your semester of service is about planning, preparation, and action. In this phase, you will learn how students can develop a strategy for change and a common vision for success, how they can create action plans and implement the service activity to make a difference in their community.
When students take action, there are several things that they can do to make sure that they'll maximize their impact and that they can take action in a way where everyone in your class is involved. A lot of times we'll look at some of those key areas as forming strong strategic partnerships, making sure that you have the right resources to take action, telling your story and sharing it with the community, and really working with people outside like volunteers before an event. One of the things that we have is on page 43 and 44 in the Semester of Service Teacher Toolkit. We have those different teams. So you might have 5 or 6 students that are on the partnerships team, and during that time they're deciding, okay, who can we work with in the community? What are those partners and those organizations that can help us? What can the partner provide? What kind of research can we do before we start working with them? And ultimately, when they work with us, are they going to help us really make a great impact? Are they going to really help us throughout the entire process? So the other team would be the gathering resources team, and that's deciding if you happen to have a grant, how much is it going to cost for materials, equipment, or are you going to see if you can get those donated? Are you going to need extra funding or support? And really after the project, how are you going to make sure that you recognize and thank all the people, the sponsors, the donors, the volunteers that really helped make this event possible in collaboration with your students? Team 3, which is on page 44, is really about telling the story. So while you're telling that story, are you making posts using social media? Are you using Facebook, Twitter, Instagram? And really, are you making sure that during that time period you're writing blogs and you're really telling people not just about the final project that you are doing for your semester of service, but are you also talking about really the process that was involved in creating this really important project? And then finally, Team 4, or one of the teams that you can have, is really working with volunteers. So how many volunteers are you going to need for a Global Youth Service Day event, for example? Are you going to make sure that you have a lot of encouragement and feedback that you're getting from those volunteers? And are you really making the experience meaningful? Or are they just coming in and doing something that isn't really that important?
One of the important things to remember during the planning and preparation stage is that students are capable of really taking the lead and making sure that everything is organized. The next video that I'm going to show you is of a middle school student in DC named Antoinette. She was planning a disaster prep event for Global Youth Service Day, and I asked her if she could explain how she was working with her classmates to organize the event.
We split up into 2 different groups. One group is Team Earthquakes, which we pronounce as Team Quakes, and the other one is Team Storms, which is Team Storms. And we split up in groups. First as Team Quakes and Team Storms. We figured out some people that collaborate together very well, and then we set everyone in a circle, and we called out the names of jobs that they could do, and they raised their hands, and we put their name down as a list, and we color-coded it to green, red, orange, blue, and things of that nature. And after we did that, we split up into groups. One group were editors and directors, script writers, advertisers, and researchers. The researchers would research stuff on storms, safety tips, earthquakes, natural disasters, and script writers would write the script for the play we are producing. The directors and the editors would edit and put their feel for it in our script, and they would change stuff around how it would go to their techniques, and the advertisers would try to get it out to the public about what we're doing as a higher achievement community for natural disasters.
It is really important to contact issue area experts during a semester of service. These experts are people within your community that are passionate and engaging. There's also an opportunity to reach out to people that are national or international experts and try to really schedule a 5 to 10 minute, maybe short phone call with them. It's important that the students you're working with come up with really high quality questions and that they ask them during the time that they're interviewing the specific expert. Some of the experts could be government agencies, colleges, organizations within your area. And it's really important that when you're working with these issue area experts, that it's more of a conversation. Think like a conversation cafe, really an opportunity for students to talk to these issue area experts at their level, ask them high-level questions, and really gain something from it. You want to make sure that you're not setting up a time where an expert will be talking down to the kids. It's pretty common for this to happen, but at the end of the day, the youth aren't going to gain as much unless they're engaged in a meaningful conversation. It's also important when working with these issue area experts that students do their research before the expert comes in. This could be looking at their LinkedIn profile, going to their website, and if you have access to their resume to see kind of what their background is, then that will help for students as they consider future careers. One thing that is also very important in working with the issue experts is to write a thank you note and let them know how important it was and how grateful you are for them coming in and taking time out of their busy schedule, whether it's a phone call or a meeting in person. So one of the most important things while facilitating a semester of service is really to look at the individual strengths of each of your students. We use strengths because we think that you can focus ultimately on their passion, their skill, their talent, but you can also look at that from an academic lens, which really gives you an opportunity to link things much easier to academic areas and to be able to demonstrate growth over time. So you're really going to want to think about that particular issue, that you're passionate about, but then talk about, okay, what is it that the students that you're working with can offer? And there are definitely planning pages throughout the semester of service teacher toolkit that you can use to write down what those are and how it best relates to the particular project. So what we found is the more specific you are, the more action you can take and the more powerful your outcomes will be. One of the things you're going to want to remember when planning a semester of service is that you want to think of the students being in a room with public officials or a school board or a city council. Would you rather have those students talk to those elected officials about general water quality, or would you rather have them talk about the specifics of zebra mussels and how they can have a negative effect on Lake Michigan? What are they going to be more impressed with? Where can more action take place? Once you're at a point where students have made a decision and decided what they want to focus on, what type of action they'd like to take, it's really important to decide if the project is doable. So on page 40 in the Semester of Service Teacher Toolkit, you can use this page as a way for students to write a paragraph about what the idea is and then talk about, will the project apply what you're studying this year? Will it actually make measurable change in your community? Is it important to not only you but your students? And most importantly, can the project be completed on time? This is typically the question where students will look at it and maybe, if they're very ambitious, say, okay, we're going to have to scale back. We're going to have to cut out a couple of things. It's nice to do some backwards planning and think of a specific date when this will end. Typically, Global Youth Service Day is a great day to use, and you can look at that, come up with a timeline, and see if it's feasible for you to do all of the things that you hope to accomplish in your semester of service. So how do you make an impact? Well, YSA talks about impact in 4 different ways. We call that ASAP, which usually would be known as soon as possible. The first way that we look at impact is through awareness, and that could be different awareness campaigns. You can make a promotional video, you can put something on YouTube, really having people understand what's the significance of this particular issue. You also want to talk about the specific deliverables of awareness. So, how many people are you going to educate, for example, when it comes to childhood hunger? Looking at that true measurable impact. The next one is service. That can be direct service, where you could be actually going out and planting a garden. And it could also be something that is done throughout a period of time, which could be mentoring and teaching other people within your community about childhood hunger. And as far as advocacy is concerned, that's really policy. That's getting students to look at what are the different policy changes, what are the different changes in behavior that you can have in the area. And sometimes that could be some sort of a policy set up within your school or school district. It could be a law that's up. It could be a bill. And a lot of things that you can do in advocacy are have petitions that people can sign, or really writing letters to public officials to try to get something out there. And then if you look at philanthropy, we look at not just money, but also what kind of supplies you're collecting. You could be raising money, or you could be donating food to a local food bank. And we start talking about what were the number of donors, how much money did you raise, were you actually able to have measurable impact, and how can you prove that you had that measurable impact? So by talking about these 4 ways of taking action, it is a great way for students to see what action truly looks like. ASAP is really a great way to show them, and this is something you might want to put on a wall. One of the things we've been talking about are what I like to call living documents. Those are things that you put on the wall. If there's one thing I've found for successful projects, it's the teachers that put something on the wall, something that you can write, something that students are looking at throughout the day. Those projects tend to be more successful because it's always in the head. Now, instead of you as a teacher having it in your lesson plan book, you now have your entire class looking at that wall. So opportunities to bring in that particular issue, that project that you're working on in your semester of service, it happens more frequently. And the more that happens, the more that you have students bringing up the particular issue or theme, the more likelihood that it's going to continue over time, that you're going to bring in new students, and then they become the drivers. They become the ones that are taking control of the project in a good way. But by having that living document on the wall, you become much more organized. If you look at the next graphic here, it really shows how the teacher did a great job of really making this graphic of childhood hunger at the center, but then you have these great questions that she pulled from that graphic below, and it talked about how does that make you feel? Why are children hungry? Where is childhood hunger taking place? And what are the kinds of foods that we will need to maximize our impact? And you can see what a great chart and a great way for her to organize that project. So another thing that will happen are these teachable moments, times where students will work on something on the weekend. They'll start to focus on the project in times when they're usually watching television. And in one case, one of the students, Evan, really said, I want to take my love for music and I want to write a song. So he wrote a song called The Hunger Blues to talk about really in an emotional way how hunger was affecting his community. And really it was a way to try to inspire his friends and his colleagues to understand why this was such an important issue. So a great time period for youth to not only share the change that they're making in their communities, but also take action is on Global Youth Service Day. Global Youth Service Day was established in 1988. It really celebrates and mobilizes the millions of young people who improve their communities through service. GYSD is the largest youth service event in the world and the only one that is dedicated to the contributions that children and youth make 365 days of the year. GYSD is celebrated each year in more than 100 countries with young people working together with schools, youth organizations, nonprofits, community and faith-based organizations, national service programs, government agencies, and adult mentors, really to address the world's most critical issues and change their communities. Global Youth Service Day is a campaign of YSA, and ultimately what we hope is that this is a chance for youth to think globally, act locally, and see that there are youth all over the world that are taking action, focusing on some of the most critical issues, and that we can all work together to make the world a better place. During a semester of service, it's really important for students to think globally and act locally. On page 29 in the Semester of Service Teacher Toolkit, you'll see an activity. You can use 4 big, large pieces of paper and write our world, our country, our state, and our city. On each of the sheets, youth can go around the room in groups and they can write down words and facts or pictures that really describe that issue globally. And then when they're done, they can share with each other and find how a lot of the problems around the world can be linked and how we can think in that global perspective and notice that what we do locally can have an impact globally.